These pass back there. So everybody, good morning. How are you all doing? I'm no longer suffering from the cold. That's good. It's been like 2 weeks. Are you guys past your colds yet? No. Okay. Sorry to hear that. Make sure you all get one of these. Who does not have a sheet? Worksheet? Okay. So before I get you guys started on that, I want to say a couple things. I sent an email yesterday. This has been uploaded. The terms for this. It's very last minute. And I'm curious how many of you got the email. Okay, that's good. All right, so this class usually runs itself, and I've made some changes, and so that's made for some surprises to me that I was not always ready for. Things sort of come up a little bit at the last minute, so I'm going to try and do better looking ahead. About half or so of the semester left, and I will do that so that you can have more prep time for things. This assignment, though, shouldn't be very taxing. Hopefully you have a chance to look at the readings for the day. These terms are all in there. I'm asking you to write this down in a couple sentences for one of these terms. So what is this term talking about? What's it referring to? Just take a couple minutes and do that right now, and then we're going to use that to talk about in a second. All right. And please be sure and put your name on your worksheet. Sure. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind putting also your section that you are in for discussion, it will help us to know who you are. I don't actually have a pen today, I'm sorry. But I bet someone has already done for me to loan you a pen. Is there an extra pen or pencil that someone could loan to? Okay. I got one already. Okay. Go ahead for now and keep that. But, be sure in the class to remove them. Okay, I'll give you guys another minute and a half or so, 2 minutes to finish these. So if you're just getting here, please hurry up and get something down. Okay, good enough. So let's talk about the second term briefly here. So what is this term referring to? Democracy. What is it? So I'd love to hear from people I don't hear from very often. So I'll just sort of pick out people. If you just raise your hand if you have an answer that you feel good about, and I will look and call on people who I like to call on. All right. And tell me your name. Jason. Yeah. Okay, so very good. So it's imitating, in some sense, the Western forms of government, the democratic. It's a party government, so there are parties that are actually vying for seats in the government. And you mentioned also that there are various, even some controversial parties like the Communist Party, the Socialist Party. Very good. Any other comments on that? You want to add to that? That was pretty good. So how else can we elaborate upon democracy? Andrew. Yeah, right. So the one of the big events is the creation of universal manhood suffrage, right? Which that will actually end today's lecture. This is a term that defines this period from 1912 to 1926. The Taisho Emperor's life and his reign as the emperor. Talk about it because in this period there really was a drive for more democratic Japan. So hold on to those for now. We're going to look at the other term about in a few minutes. The person sort of that I think is in many ways an early leader in the move for democracy, more democracy, is Harake. He is a commoner. He's not part of the nobility. He wasn't in the samurai class. He comes from a humble background. And so seeing him, his rise to power, I think is very interesting. So he is a young protege of Ito Hirobumi. And then his first major role is as the home minister after the Russo-Japanese War comes to an end. And he is, I think, the first commoner to be in that role as well. And what he's working on as home minister is, of course, all of Japan's, sort of overseeing all of Japan's various like education, various things going on in Japan. But he's also working on trying to create a more solid political base. He's part of the Seiyukai, or the Friends of the Constitutional Government Party, and he wants this party to actually have some teeth, to have some influence, and to have a sort of a core of real members who can lead government. And he begins in that role to apply, to use party lines to appoint people to jobs like governorships and those kinds of things. And he also uses the party to sort of sell, he uses his position to sell the party to people who might want to become favorable to the party. So he uses the party, he uses his role to basically give away contracts, to make promises, this old discussion of sort of pork barrel politics. He's applying that to the fullest, right? If you vote for the Seiyukai, we will give you this, right? Or we will allow you to build this or do this. And so within a decade or so, he really has pulled on towards the Seiyukai a lot of influential and very wealthy individuals, as well as people who have been looking forward to having new roads built, new bridges, farmers trying to find ways to have easier access to the capital, etc. So these things are very successful, and this is how he becomes the first commoner prime minister in 1918. He continues the same policy, right, of trying to promote his party first. So he appoints members of his cabinet from his party as well. And this is the first time in Japan we have a party government, where the Seiyukai holds most of the jobs and leadership in the government, and they have a majority as well in the imperial diet. So the party really has the sort of the most influence in politics. He built on this initial success by using the party to calm things down. If you'll recall, 1905 is the big riot in Hibiya Park, right? The protest, the government's handling of the ending of the Russo-Japanese War, how little Japan got from this, the treaty that ends the war, the Treaty of Portsmouth. From then until 1918, we just have lots of disputes going on. If you'll recall, we also discussed last week the rice riots, right? And the women who were upset at seeing their rice taken away, how that became a national movement, right? But Harake, as prime minister, is able with the government to get enough partisan support to impose order again on Japan, to suppress uprisings, negotiate with those who are trying to foment violence as well. So this is a big success. And so in the background of democracy, there really is this effort by someone who is elected, right, initially elected, to then become, to promote government figures who are elected in jobs of power. Because he is somewhat democratic, right, because he's promoting a democracy that is based on popular participation, he is targeted by those of the right wing who would like to see the old powers, old money stay in power. He is killed for that reason. But throughout the rest of Imperial Japan's existence, there will be party governments. We discussed how the military will become more and more influential, but they are always sort of trying to deal with these party governments that are always nagging, right, and always trying to maintain their authority as well. And that all comes from his efforts of Harake. So that's the background. Let's talk about what's happening among the people of Japan as a whole. One of the big developments, and one of the words I asked you to think about, was the word salaryman. This is Shinbashi, one of my favorite places in Tokyo. And as you can see, all the salarymen, they look kind of the same. They all wear black or sometimes dark blue suits and white shirts with nice crisp collars. This is a culture that did not happen spontaneously. It was created, right? And I want to talk about how this happened briefly today. So I should say higher education. The pathway to becoming a salaryman began with the creation of new imperial universities. There was only one, and then by 1910, there are 3 or 4, and they'll continue to actually multiply to where there are, I think, around 10 or 11. But these are the best government institutions for higher education. And there are also several very prestigious private institutions, some of which go back to the 1870s, like Keio University, for example, founded by Fukuzawa Yukiichi. These schools have become able, right, to give students higher education that prepares them for business, but as well as things like literature and government as well. So upon graduation from the top schools, right, not the ones that are in the middle, but like the best schools, men can aspire to join the government or private industry that will hire them in a lifetime position. And this sort of is a pipeline, right? When you graduate from the University of Tokyo, you can go work at the government or at Mitsubishi. These things are they're sort of all set up ahead of time, and that's how that functions. One thing that defined them then and does today is the preponderance of Western dress, right? So this is a period of time, an amazing period where we still had seen so much of a mixing of people wearing, more traditional Japanese clothing, a lot of kimono still walking around, Western dress. In this sense, it's talking about wearing a suit and a tie, right? Wearing Western business clothing. That defines their look. They also have job security, which is a big deal. Right now, these jobs they have are going to be jobs for life, and we'll talk about how this becomes one of the building blocks for Japanese economic as well as social systems over the next 70 and 80 years. But it begins here with these contracts that are given to the best students of these best schools for life to work as employees. This also separates them from the other people who have to go to work with their hands, right? Those who have to work a lunchbox, have to work outdoors, those who have to work underground as well. So this becomes sort of the elite, I would say, about 10% of the workforce, and everyone begins to aspire to this, right? The men aspire to this, the women aspire to be married to men who belong to this class as well. So this is kind of the elite class, if you will, of the working part of society. And I also mentioned on this, I mentioned also on the slide, suburbs. So if you think about Japan's rapidly and very intensively urbanizing, this momentum has been going on since the 1600s. It doesn't stop. But because at some point it has to go somewhere, and because salaries don't keep up with the cost of living in Osaka and in Tokyo, which is the creation of suburbs. The first suburb is one called Dinentoshi, which is outside of Tokyo. They built the first train line to it just to serve this one suburb, and it's about 20 minutes away. And we'll see that Tokyo will spread and spread and spread to include like Shinjuku, which was part of Tokyo before, and Ikebukuro, and eventually it will even include areas further away. But these sort of peripheral areas, like the suburbs, become part of a network of trains and of housing developments that make megalopolises, right, in Japan. But this also makes the salaryman, it also creates some problems, right, because he has now to travel from further and further away to get to work. The trains will take him there, right, and back, but this begins to put more pressure on women to be the ones to stay at home. Let's talk about Ginza. The book mentions Ginza-buru, which is a sort of Ginza browsing or Ginza viewing. So Ginza is established in the 1880s, right, this new Western neighborhood. And by 1920, it's become the hub for all things modern and Western. They have the first electric lighting, they have the first tramway, and they have the nice Western brick buildings. The businessmen on their breaks oftentimes will go to Ginza. Japan's first department store called Mitsukoshi is established in Ginza and becomes also an emblem, right, for this new wealthier, more sort of, they have more leisure, and they have more desire to consume this new modern society. The book also mentions beer halls and cafes. I would love to talk more about cafe culture, but I can't today. But cafes are a very important element here. The cafe is obviously a Western term. It's a Western concept. People get together and go to a cafe and talk, as opposed to having a community or location-based gathering. They're people who have the same job or work together. People who may cross paths elsewhere can come together in these new gathering spaces. So this is also a new development that's pretty important in Japan as well. And cafes, but also some beer halls define this new culture as well. Okay, let's talk next about the second term I asked you to identify, the moga or madangaru. So what is this term referring to? You raise your hands again. I can pick a few people to help us understand that. Yeah. All right. James. So a big part of her definition is that she is modern and Western in appearance, right? So Western clothing, right? Again. So like, what is Western clothing for a woman? What does that entail? Peter? Sorry, Peter. Yeah, Henry. Yeah. Status symbol. Explain what you mean by that. Okay, so like, what kind of nice clothes are you thinking about when you say nice clothes? All right. Let's add some more color to this. You're definitely right. These are Western clothes. They're stylish, right? There is a question of sort of Western mode, right, or style. Yeah. And tell me your name again. Jackson. Kimono is not Western. Okay. Other stuff, Julia? Okay. Okay, so dresses are big. What kind of dresses? Okay, so they're beautiful. They can be flowing, right? You think about Western clothes before, right? That were worn in Japan. These were very tight-fitting and very formal clothing. Maybe you see that as sort of a Western-style ball, but that was it. And that was the super elite of Japan. Now we see women wearing dresses, right? Dresses that are sometimes long, but also sometimes also shorter, right? What else would be a sort of a Western-style clothing you could imagine women wearing? A boa. Yeah, okay. Western jewelry. A boa, very flashy. Yeah, definitely. How about the haircut? Sure, yeah, like the bob, right? So all these things define her appearance. And one big thing no one mentioned was pants, right? When wearing pants. This is also a big difference that we see among the moga or modern girl. What about her personality or her lifestyle or her, those kinds of things? Jackie and then Ron. So much, right? Wow, that was a lot, right? So first of all, going backwards, they choose their own partners, right? This whole love marriage thing is a new idea, and that they're embracing that and trying to argue that they have the right to do that. You mentioned also that they're talking about liberation and freedom as a whole for women, right? Not achieved, but idealized and hoped for, and in some ways realized. You also talked about education a little bit, getting more of that, but also about occupation, right? So this is a big area I want to talk about today is occupation. So more to add to that, very good, I think, description. Ross?
I think it also mentioned that they had access to
Contraception, yeah, right. Margaret Sanger talking about birth control is a very big change as well in the 1920s. And Martin, more to add to that? Okay, so lots of good points, right? So women are trying to be more independent. Sometimes even choosing to just to stay single, right, rather than being in a marriage that will lead to their subjection, right? And makeup's also a big deal, right? Makeup, meaning women are appropriating new Western forms of makeup, Western lipstick, Western rouge. Those things are all on the rise. And we're able to do that not at home, but to go out in public, right? And as independent women and dress more freely as well. So it's also a bit more democratic, right? We have more choices in that sense as well. So very good response from everybody on that. You guys can actually pass those forward now, please. Just be sure to name those. If you didn't get a chance to get that done because you weren't here yet, after class, come see me. Okay? So pass those forward. All right. A few more coming forward here. Thank you, Leanne. Sure. Okay, let's talk more about women. They're kind of the hidden story, I think, of the Taisho democracy period. Women are able, so the 1899, the government passed a law. Every prefecture had to have a women's higher school. So women were getting basically middle school education and early high school education if they wanted it, and they were able to afford to not work to go to school. And this is part of what leads to 99% literacy at 1910 or so in Japan. So this is a big change. The education that we're getting increasingly allows them to go on to university. And the book doesn't talk about this, but Japan's first school for women, first university for women was established in 1901. It's called Japan Women's University, and others follow. And these kinds of universities allow women to have a college education. Some also go abroad to England, Oxford, not to Oxford, to Cambridge. We have a women's section at Cambridge. They go to schools in the United States like Bryn Mawr, like Smith College as well. And they go back to Japan with these degrees, and they can get better jobs. Some of the jobs that they can get in particular are becoming journalists and authors, becoming doctors. We have the first women doctors in 1896 in Japan, and more will also become developed in the 1910s. Nursing is a profession that comes into its own for women in the Sino-Japanese War with the Red Cross in Japan, and they become more employable and more in demand as well, as public health in particular becomes a big deal. Women become teachers, especially at women's schools, but also other schools, elementary schools throughout Japan as well. And then those who have university jobs or sometimes other education or less education can also become clerical workers. There are many jobs that women cannot have, right? These are a few of the jobs that women can aspire to have. If you were a conservative Japanese male and you believe that women should probably stay home and work in the home, but you were okay with them becoming nurses, for example, or teachers, how do you reconcile that? Because Japan is still at this point a very male-dominated society, but men were okay with women becoming nurses and teachers, for example. Why is that job? Why are these jobs okay? What makes these jobs less controversial than perhaps being a banker? I don't know, kind of thing. Joe? Explain what you mean by that. Yeah, right. So there's a concept called good wife, wise mother. In Japanese, it's yosai kenbo. And this is an ideology that comes from Confucian thought and gets retooled and a bit simplified in the 1870s in Japan. You may have discussed, I can't remember, the figure who makes it popular, Nakamoto Masanao, but by 1910 or so, this has become to define sort of a broad definition of the role of Japanese women, right? And it's not just being in the house, right? Good wife, mother, can be being a nurturer beyond the home as well, right? It can be fighting for the education of housewives beyond the home, so that they can do better. They can iron better, do laundry better, have more efficient household management. They can put away clothes more efficiently, have more free time to think. All these kinds of things are also part of that larger movement. But anyway, all these jobs, they, for the most part, are able to sort of be subsumed under the category of good wife, wise mother, so they're okay. With perhaps the only exception being journalism, which we'll discuss a little bit more. The new woman dresses, and she wears, as I mentioned before, pants, Western hats as well. And they, are inspired by styles from Paris and from London, but also from the U.S. in large part. Right? The flappers, as you mentioned, Julia, are their models. And they're pretty proud of this. One of the largest goals of, I haven't mentioned this term yet, the new woman. Let's sort of take a step back. So in 1911, a play by Henrik Ibsen called what's the play called? Main character's name is Nora. All right, so you can look it up later, but a very famous play about a woman in an unhappy marriage who decides to leave, and her kids stay with the husband. She walks out, and her name is Nora. So you can look up that if you'd like to know about that. But this play is part of sort of the larger burgeoning movement of feminism in the world. When we read this play and are inspired, some are also upset. But this play gets to Japan. It's translated by a professor at Japan's sort of other major private university called Waseda. And then they also put on a play. It's called A Doll's House, is the name of the play. So, and a lot of the sort of discussion around this play, right, deals with the so-called new woman, right? What is a new woman? What is this new breed of woman that could leave her husband, right? Who could leave her family behind even if she needed to find her own fulfillment, to be self-aware. So that's a long way of getting to my point, which is that by 1911, 1912, this term is being used in Japan as well, the new woman, or shinfujin in Japanese, to talk about some of the sort of the promises, but also the pitfalls, right, of these women who are more liberated, more educated, more independent. And this figure here, that's what I chose, sort of embodies this new woman phenomenon. She goes to Japan Women's University, 1903, and then she becomes a writer, and she's trying to write for various publications, but they won't publish her work because it's too focused on the role of women, on their identity, and their questions, and it's controversial. So she establishes her own journal. It's a journal called Blue Stocking, which is actually a term that refers to Western feminist thinkers at the same time, but it has a Japanese name, which is the Seito. And in this journal, she's encouraging women to come and write, and to write stories and poems that embody the experience of women in Japan. And I think I may show you a slide if I have time, of a poem that was published in this journal. She also talks about this play, A Doll's House, right? And they discuss it. In part because of that, a lot of male readers and male authors and male journalists attack the magazine. They attack women for being, for going too far, for trying to embrace independence in ways that are going to be negative for Japan as a whole. And they call women who are trying to sort of embody this new womanhood, they call them sort of, short-sighted, immature, foolish, et cetera, et cetera. And so the modern guard, who really appears a little bit later, on 1920, is carrying around the baggage of this discussion, right? So women being independent, all the problems that can come with that are part of the sort of the term's weight as it comes into being in the 1920s. But many would call her one of Japan's first literary feminists, and she's very influential from that point of view. This is a poem published in Seito, in the journal, by a pretty well-known Japanese female poet named Osamu Akiko. Hopefully you can see that in this poem, right, there's the assumption that men, first of all, are sinful, right? Bad men. I think we can today hear lots about, if we'd like. And then that women have, just by their very nature, right, the ability to control, or at the very least, discipline men, right, for their sins. So this is happening, this is part of the sort of Taisho democracy movement, is women sort of believe that they are, in fact, a great gender, right? And in fact, the first poem that begins this journal, it begins with, in the beginning, women were the sun, talking about the sun goddess of Japan and that kind of thing. So, Japan's mythical origins. And so it really is trying to bring women to the center of discussion, which is what feminism has been about for over a century. So that's happening as part of this movement as well. Let's talk about one last part, which is sort of a more politically engaged element of society. Men who work as saraiman, women who are new women or modern garas, they are existing in this society, sometimes writing about it, sometimes making choices that are controversial, but they're not necessarily fighting in the realm of politics. But there is a group of mostly men, and I'll mention how women become part of this later on, who are trying to make democracy more real in Japan. They're having some success. Suki Bunji, who is a Christian labor organizer, he fights for the rights of miners at Ashio Copper Mine, and also those who live around it, whose water has been polluted. And as I may have mentioned before, that he is the person behind Japan's first factory law, passed in 1911, and went into effect in 1916. He also founds Japan's first labor union, the Friendship Society, or the UIKai, in 1912. So this sort of is at the beginning of the Taisho period, and it really is for the beginning of the Taisho democracy in that sense, right? We talked a bit about how Japan's National Labor Union grows from this small foundation. Ideologically, there are a few things I want to make sure we have covered. One is a professor at the Imperial University who is a good friend of Suki Bunji, named Yoshino Sakuzo, also a Christian, heavily influenced by Western thoughts, Western ideas. He wrote a document on the meaning of constitutional government, in which he tries to explain what democracy really should look like in Japan. Right? He's talking about universal suffrage. He's talking about an army that is controlled by the people and not the emperor. He's talking also about a diet that really is elected by a popular vote and not some small portion of the vote. His term for this is popular democracy, or Minpon Shugi. And what's interesting is, by the time that this was published in 1919, but this is not a surprising or shocking idea. People are aware that he has these ideas. A lot of students, especially a lot of elite, well-educated members of the educated elite, they like the ideas he's written about. He's very popular. And at Tokyo Imperial University, he inspires students to found their own group called the New Man Society, or Shinjinkai, which they would like to take these ideas and make them more proactive and more real. They create Japan's first secular house for settlement for those who are either former prostitutes or those who might have been in jail and need to get back on their feet, and these kinds of things as well. Across the hall at the Imperial University in Tokyo is his colleague Minobe Tatsukichi. There should be an S there, sorry, Tatsukichi, who by this point actually had also been made a member of the Diet. He also has a theory about government, and essentially he argues that Japan's government is a body, right? And that each part of the government is an organ. With the emperor as the head, people are in the organs of the state, and sorry, this should be the emperor. So the emperor as the head is still an organ of the state, and that the whole of the body of Japan was important, right? Not just the head, the emperor, or not just the neck, which I think he talked about being mostly the cabinet, but also the people of Japan as well. So these ideas also popular, right? Also read about and discussed in lots of publications at the time. The third figure I want to mention, Seiki, who at this point he tried a lot of different ideologies on for size, and none seemed to fit. So he crafted his own sort of amalgamation of ideologies, including right-wing thought with some socialism, and he arrived at what today looks a lot like National Socialism, another term for Nazism today. And National Socialism for him means that the people of Japan have been separated from the emperor, and that the emperor and people should be part of one united body, of which the emperor should be the guiding voice, the guiding will, and that people should obey the emperor, right? In a sense, that's very totalitarian, but in order to achieve socialistic aims like more shared wealth, more equality, these kinds of things. He also envisioned people of Asia as a whole have been oppressed by the West, which was not untrue, and that Japan could be the sort of guiding light to liberate Asia from these various Western imperial oppressors. I think it was Jackie who mentioned, but also Ross who mentioned the rise of parties, right, that were not, and also, where'd you go? Jason's not here anymore, I think, mentioned the rise of political parties. So one of the parties that come into its own is the party, the Communist Party, that founded itself in 1922, trying to follow the model of the West, of the Russian Bolsheviks. They also hold their own first meeting in 1920 before calling themselves the Communist Party, and they are tolerated, right, in the Taisho period. There's a crackdown on them. They're allowed to publish and to have their views publicized. Another ideology that continues to exist without a real party is anarchism. One figure, Osugi Sakai, who's pictured here, is calling, mostly in writing, for strikes throughout the country to destabilize the country and bring it to a more egalitarian order. So these are all happening in the background as well. And I guess I'll mention that. In the violence happening during the earthquake of 23, a police officer does kill Sugi Sakai in his cell, as well as his partner, the feminist, Inoue, with the hopes of stopping this voice because it was very popular, right? So again, this is a period of democracy. We'll skip the next slide and go to the last slide, which is this one. Sorry. Page 25. the imperial diet passes the realization of the dream of democracy for many, right? Universal mandatory suffrage. Men over the age of 18, I think it is, or 21, I forgot the age, 25, thank you, are able to vote, right, across the country. So this is a big moment. We're going from a vote that was about 2% before to the whole country of men. Yeah. And you can't be on welfare either, by the way. But what I want to leave you with is at the same time, the same year, they passed another law called the Peace Police Law. And the Peace Police Law, sort of a few days later, acts to sort of counterbalance this push for democracy. And I think it also presages Japan's shift towards the right and towards totalitarianism. Anyone who has formed an association that wants to alter Japan's national body, the Kokutai, or private property as a system, can be imprisoned with or without hard labor for as much as 10 years. And hopefully, as this very open-ended the terminology, the phrasing here makes clear that anyone who opposes those in power could be imprisoned, right? And so we'll talk from now forward about how this begins to happen and how this period was quite democratic in some ways, right, and empowering, and there was some optimism, how in fact it did not last very long in the end. Okay. I think we have to go now, but if you have a question, I'm here. Thanks, and I'll see you all on Thursday. Hey.